أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Verily, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the evils of our own actions. And whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. And whomsoever Allah leaves astray, none can guide back to the correct path. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We testify there is no deity worthy of our worship except for Allah, who is alone with no partnership, and never has and never will be another. And we bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last and the final prophet of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My brothers and sisters, friends and family members, everybody tuning in to the live stream, and everybody joining us for the Zoom meeting. Thank you for joining us again for our Sunday halaqah. Today we will be continuing on the book of Those Promised Paradise by Noura Durkee. So with that, last week we had jumped into, I believe, our first mentioning of the people promised paradise, Aisha Bint Abu Bakr, radiallahu anha. And we'll be continuing the rest of her chapter, pages 67 to 78, starting with the trial of innocence. More than likely, one of the most popularized narrative and story regarding Aisha, and reason being, of course, because there is revelation revealed about her innocence inside of the Quran. So it's a open and a beautiful topic to discuss about, and also a sense of being able to, for the future, save us, the future Muslim generations, from backbiting, from slandering, and also the punishment for things such as that sort of thing. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Indeed, one of the toughest trials of Aisha radiallahu anha faced as the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came when she was very young. She described it as thus: before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left for his battles, he used to draw lots using arrows, and whomever's arrow would come out was allowed to go with him. And during one battle, my arrow had come out, so I went with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the orders of hijab had come down. I usually traveled in my hauda and lived in it. Hauda, by the way, is usually on the back of a camel or a mount, sort of like a little box, and it's covered from all four sides so that the person would not be able to see into it, and lived in it. And we went on with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam until he was finished with his battle. And after returning, we had approached Medina. We stopped for rest at night. Then he ordered that we should go on. And I came out of my hauda until I was far away from the troops to relieve myself. And when I was about to return, one of my favorite necklaces broke and fell off. So I bent down and searched for it. And because I wanted it, I was delayed. And in the meantime, the men carrying the hauda lifted it up, thinking that I was not in it. And they could not tell whether I was in it or not, because when they lifted it, I was only a young girl then. So they took the camel and left. And I found out that my necklace after the troops had gone. I'd found my necklace after the troops had gone. And I called out but there was no reply. And I remained where I was, thinking that they would miss me and return for me. And while I was sitting, I fell asleep. And Safwan ibn al-Muwatta al-Salami came after the troops to find anything left behind. And when he approached where I was, he saw that someone was asleep, and he came near and saw me. He knew who I was, as he previously had seen me before the hijab, and I woke up while he was retreating. And I covered my face with my jilbaya, and in the name of Allah, he did not utter a word to me, nor did I hear anything of him except his retreat. He made his horse kneel for me to mount, and he led me until we reached the troops, after which they started backbiting, and I was blamed for a month. People continued to gossip and perpetuate this lie, although I did not realize what was going on. I became suspicious during a time when I was sick, and I did not feel the tenderness from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he entered the room, he saluted us and said, "How are you all today?" And then he would leave abruptly. I did not know why he was acting this way until I recovered from my illness and was able to go out. I went with Musata at Al Munasia to the bathroom, and she said, "Have you not heard of what is being said?" And I asked, "What is being said?" She then told me about the people who were telling the lie. After hearing this, I became more sick than I ever was before. And soon after I returned home, Rasulullah SAW entered and said, "How are you all?" I said, "Would you allow me to go to my parents? I now want to know of this news from them." Rasulullah SAW gave me permission to bring my parents, and I told my mother, "Mother, what are the people talking about?" And she said, "Daughter, take it easy, for by Allah, it is very rare that a woman as beautiful as you and as loved by her husband as you are loved by Rasulullah SAW does not have a lot of women gossiping about her." And I said, "SubhanAllah, people have talked about this." And I cried all night until there were no more tears and no more sleep. And when no revelation came to dispel the suspicions, Rasulullah SAW asked Ali ibn Abi Talib and Usama ibn al-Zayd, when he has not received any revelation, inquiring whether he should depart from his family. As for Usama bin Zayd, he recounted to Rasulullah SAW what he knew of the innocence of his family and all the good that he knew about them. And he said, "O Rasulullah SAW, of your family, we know nothing except good about them. As for Ali, radiallahu anhu, he suggested, Rasulullah, why don't you ask her maid and she will tell you the truth." So Rasulullah SAW called Buraria and asked her, "Buraria, have you seen anything suspicious?" And she said, "No, by the name of he who has sent you with the truth, I've seen nothing about her to complain, except that she is a little girl who falls asleep while I am making dough for her parents, and the chickens come and eats it from her." Rasulullah SAW went to the minbar and said, "O Muslim people, what would you say about a man who has spoken ill of the people of my own house? For by Allah, I know nothing about my family except what is good about them, and they have spoken about a man whom I know nothing but good, and whoever has entered my house except with me." I remained tearful and sleepless throughout the day, and my parents stayed with me, having seen me cry for 2 whole nights not sleeping. And while they were at my place, one of the women from the Ansar asked permission to sit with me. And during this time, Rasulullah SAW had entered, saluted us, and sat. He had not stayed at my place since that lie started, and a month had elapsed with no revelation concerning me. He made tahajjud and said, "O Aisha, if you were innocent, Allah will make it evident. If you were guilty, may Allah ask Allah for forgiveness and repent. If a slave admits his guilt and repents to Allah, Allah allows him repentance." And when Rasulullah SAW had finished, I wiped away my tears so he would not feel a drop of them. And I said to my father, "Reply on my behalf to Rasulullah SAW on what he has said." He responded, "By Allah, I do not know what to say to Rasulullah SAW." And I said to my mother, "Reply to Rasulullah SAW." She said, "I don't know what to say to Rasulullah SAW." Finally, I said, "I'm a young girl who has not read a lot of Quran. I have known that you have heard that talk until it has settled in your pulse and you believed it. If I told you I was innocent and Allah knows I am innocent, you would not believe me. If I confess something, you would believe me. By Allah, I can find nothing to tell you except the saying of the father of Yusuf, Fasburun Jamilun, patience is beautiful. I sat on my bed knowing that I was innocent and that Allah would make me innocent, but I could not have thought that Allah would reveal for me a revelation, for I thought to myself as too insignificant to be a case that Allah would speak of me in the Quran. Yet I wish that Rasulullah SAW would see a vision with which Allah would prove my innocence. And then a revelation came concerning Aisha, radiallahu anha, that changed the minds of the Muslims and altered their attitudes for all time. Those who brought forward the lie are a body among yourselves. Do not think it is an evil to you. On the contrary, it is good for you. To every man among them will come the punishment of the sin that they have earned, and to him who took on himself the lead among them will be a grievous penalty. Why did not the believers, men and women, when you heard of the affair, put the best construction on it in their own minds and say, this is an obvious lie? Why did they not bring forward witnesses to prove it? When they have not brought the witnesses, such men in the sight of Allah stand forth themselves as liars. Were it not for the grace and mercy of Allah on you in this world and the hereafter, a terrible penalty would have seized you, in that you rushed lightly into this affair. Behold, you received it on your tongues and said out of your mouths things of which you have no knowledge, and you thought it to be a light matter, while it was most serious in the sight of Allah. Now, why did you not, when you heard it, say, it is not right for us to speak of this? Glory to Allah, this is a most serious slander. Allah admonishes you that you may never repeat such conduct if you are true believers, and Allah makes the signs plain to you, for Allah is full of knowledge and wisdom. Those who love scandal, published broadcast amongst the believers, will have a grievous penalty in this life and in the hereafter. Allah knows and you do not know. Were it not for the grace and mercy of Allah on you, and that Allah is full of kindness and mercy, you would be ruined indeed, which is mentioned in Surah An-Nur, ayats 11 through 20. And this is the example of how the lives of the first Muslims were used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave lessons of many sorts for the lives of all of us to come. With her innocence and purity then proven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Aisha radiallahu anha was told by her parents to go to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but she waited for him to come to her, for she had done no wrong. She once said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me, I know when you are content with me, or if you are angry with me. I said, how do you know? He responded, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, for when you are pleased with me, you say, no, by the Lord of Muhammad, and when you are angry with me, you say, no, by the Lord of Ibrahim. Alhamdulillah. The next section is regarding the invaluable transmitter of a hadith. So Aisha was very intelligent and quick and could memorize easily. These qualities served the Muslims, for it is to Aisha radiallahu anha that we owe many of the descriptions of the life in Medina and many hadith relating to the personal habits of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She told us how he prayed at night, how he behaved with his wives, how much he helped at home, the many things that he said during the years of their marriage. She was the only one of his wife who had not been married beforehand, and the only one who had been Muslim from birth. And she absorbed his teachings like a sponge and did everything in her power to be nearer to him, to please him, and to learn from him. And when he died, he was with her, and he was ill, and kept asking the other wives whose day it was. And they knew he wanted to be with her and let him go. And they treasured their days with Rasulullah and were generally reluctant to give them up. And Aisha radiallahu anha had recalled, it is by the grace of Allah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died in my house on my day and in my arms. Abd ar-Rahman entered our room, and he had a miswak in his hands while I was supporting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I saw him look at him. I knew he loved the miswak, so I asked him, shall I take it for you? He nodded his head, confirming his wish, so I took it and gave it to him. It was a little stiff for him, and I asked him, shall I make it softer for you? And he nodded, confirming. So I did. He had between his hands a small container with water. He kept putting his hand in it and wiping his face with it and saying, La ilaha illallah, for the death has its agony. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was buried in the room of Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, under the place where he died. And earlier she had a dream that 3 moons fell in her room. Her father Abu Bakr had explained this dream for her and said that if your dream is true, 3 of the best of all people on earth will be buried in your house. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, her father told her, that is the best of your moons, Aisha. Later, Abu Bakr and Omar were also buried in the same place. And after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of his wives continued to be honored and cared for by the Muslims of Medina, though their homes became places of advice and comfort for many. Aisha continued to work for the rights of women and to teach what she had learned and understood. And people came to visit her from all kinds of places, and they were eager to visit the burial place of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at the time of Omar, Aisha began to take her distinctive place as a teacher. When Omar or others of the prominent Sahaba were in doubt in a situation, especially in things relating to personal matters, they used to ask Aisha. Ibn Sa'd once said that the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam learned a lot of ahadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but none like Aisha and Salma. Aisha used to give her opinion at the time of Omar and Uthman until she died. May Allah give her peace. I mean, and those people of high rank from the friends of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Omar and Uthman, used to send to ask her about Sunan. And Aisha lived for a long time and became a revered teacher of Ahadith and the Sharia. Her later life was marred by the terrible events that surrounded the death of the first Khalifa, Uthman, and the political turmoil that existed during the Khalifa of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and what happened, what's known and referred to as the Great Fitna. And Aisha remained closely connected with Uthman and supported him. He also remained highly respectful of her and the rest of the mothers of the believers, taking care of them and honoring them until the end of his life when he was martyred. And she then demanded revenge against his murderers and those who had opposed him. And this act brought her into conflict with Ali. And to assume hatred and enmity between the two hearts of Ali and Aisha is probably incorrect. She said many hadith about how good Ali was, and she knew his place in Islam. And she was asked whom of the people were the most beloved to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She said Fatima, and she was asked from the men. She replied, her husband, for as I know, he was fasting continually and up all night. And after the murder of Uthman, Aisha, who had been in Mecca at the time, and many of the old Sahaba sought revenge for finding and punishing the murderers, who were a group, many of whom had come from Egypt with complaints against Uthman, Ali, and the new Khalifa. They then wanted to settle the affairs of the government and calm things down before seeking the murderers. And a huge disagreement then developed between the two factions, which resulted in Aisha going with an army to Kufa in search of justice, and she encountered the army of the Khalifa Ali with many more of the old Sahaba. And the leaders met to discuss how to resolve this crisis, which both well knew was a terrible and unbelievable thing, the first test of Muslims against Muslims. And the negotiations between Ali and Talha and Zubair and Aisha were headed towards reconciliation and peace. And in the dawn of that night, after long negotiations, and when peace was about to be announced, the whole situation exploded from within the armies, not from the leaders. Fighting soon broke out amongst the ranks, and the great fitna took its way, and its fuel was the blood of fellow Muslims. And only Allah knows best what actually happened. And once the battle had begun, it was too late to stop it, and many, many Muslims were killed fighting bravely on both sides for the cause they believed which was right. And many brave men died holding the camel of Aisha, which was in the middle of the fight, with her in her hauda on top. And at last, the camel itself was brought down. Aisha was lightly wounded. Ali escorted her politely from the hauda, and the battle was then over. Ali then sent her back to Medina. He prepared all she needed, mounts, food, and the sorts of requirements, and sent with her all those who had survived of those who were with her before. He chose 40 of the well-known women from Basra to go with her, and told her brother Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr to help her. And on the date of her departure, he came to her. She went out to bid farewell to the people, saying, "O my people, we have blamed each other. Some have made a lot of it, and some have cut it short. Whoever does this again, please inform him that by Allah, what is between me and Ali from the past is but what is between a woman and her children. And to me, though I have criticized him, he is of the best people." And after the battle of the camel, and after the martyrdom of Ali, Aisha remained in her house, and she repented for that battle the rest of her life. And as the next part here is regarding being the wise mother of the believers. So Aisha was becoming more known and famous for her knowledge of fiqh and hadith, and everyone went to her when they had questions. And likewise, she became known for her profound generosity, giving away a lot of money while she was fasting, forgetting to keep some for herself for iftar. Arwa had recalled stating, Muawiyah sent 100,000 dirhams to Aisha, but in the name of Allah, the sun had not disappeared before all the money was distributed. And one of her servants told her, if you had brought even 1 dirham worth of meat for us, to which she replied, if you had told me before I distributed all of the money, I would have done that. So when Muawiyah had took over the Khalifa, he tried to reconcile with the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, mother of the believers. He tried to get the approval of Aisha and benefit from her wisdom, yet she never approved of most of his actions and deeds, especially when he would exceed the limits of the Sharia. And he wrote to her once saying, write to me a note, but don't make it long. And she wrote back to him saying, peace on you. I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, he who seeks the good pleasure of Allah with the displeasure of the people, Allah will make him satisfied without the people's help. And he who seeks the good pleasure of people with the displeasure of Allah, Allah will make him answerable to the people. Assalamu alaikum. All her life, she tried to follow what she had learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you want to follow me, you have to be satisfied from the world with what a wayfarer would need. Never mix with the rich and never have a new dress until you have patched the old one. Arwa ibn Zubair reported saying Aisha never had a new dress until she patched the old one. And the night prayers were Aisha's favorite for optional worship. She would not let it go, and she advised people to make it constant. Her prayers were always lengthy. She was always quite diligent in her fasting. And 1 year she fasted continuously, and during the hottest of days. And Abd ar-Rahman ibn Abi Bakr, went to see Aisha on the day of Arafat, and while she was fasting, water had been sprinkled over her. Out of concern, he pleaded with her, break your fast, break your fast. But she replied, can I break my fast after I have heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that the fasting of the day of Arafat would erase the previous year's ill deeds? And during the month of Ramadan, in the year of 58 after the Hijrah, Sayyidah Aisha became very sick, and Abdullah ibn Abbas asked her permission to visit. And after greeting her, he sat down and he said, good news. And she said, of what? And he replied, you are the most beloved of the women to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the messenger never loved anything but that which is good. And he recounted all the things in her life that had helped the Muslims, including the revelation of the Quran of her innocence. He continued, there is no masjid now of the masjid of Allah in which this ayah is not being read night and day. To which she replied, forget it now, Ibn Abbas, for in the name of Allah, I wish I was forgotten completely. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this girl who grew into a woman under the love and guidance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whom we honor as the mother of the believers and the teacher of the Ummah. Ameen. And with that, we come to the closing of this, you call it a chapter, and the following week we'll begin the section regarding Ali ibn Abi Talib. With that, we'll go ahead and close the live stream and open up for our discussion on the Zoom meeting. Allahumma subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.